Welcome to episode 4 of the Lessons from Sports podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Partello. And I have to tell you, this project has just been such an awesome experience for me so far. Reconnecting with friends, really diving in with their thoughts and their business and how they go about their day-to-day life. That's something I do pretty frequently anyways in chatting with folks, but to record it and share it has just been awesome because I'm hearing from so many folks that are actually, listening to this and taking in what I feel is one of the greatest advantages I have in life, the people that I'm surrounded by, and be able to share them with all of you has just been awesome. And so thank you for the feedback. Keep it coming. I love it. It fuels me. I'm doing this for everybody else. I really enjoy it, but I love to hear other people enjoying it as well. This conversation today, I know you're going to enjoy. This guy and I started as kids at a radio station, both with dreams of becoming on-air personalities. We actually started together doing overnights in Boston. Fast forward, he continued down that path. I went a different way. We both ended up somehow in San Diego, and I've been here for the last 10 years. He's been here for way longer. Frankie V is now a nationally syndicated talk radio host on iHeartRadio, on stations all over the country, doing mornings here in San Diego. One of the things I'm really proud of him for is his new afternoon show in Boston with his brother, the V Bros, on Kiss 108, the station that he and I grew up listening to. That's what we were striving for, and he accomplished that goal. So I'm really excited. Frankie, the cool part, high school football player, college football player, and taking those lessons and applied them every day to what he does. So enjoy this conversation with, I like to consider myself an honorary V Bro, but with my V Bro, Frankie V. The man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Frankie V. Welcome to the podcast, buddy.
What's up, Wayne? It's an honor too. I get to be a part of this.
Dude, I'm so excited you're here. It's really funny. I was telling my wife, I'm like, oh, I'm a Frankie on the podcast. And she's like, Frankie doesn't do sports. I was like, Frankie played college football, man. Like,
I did.
Frankie's an athlete. And so it was funny because I was like, one of the things with this podcast is, it isn't just about people who worked in sports. It's just people who have been around sports in their life and the values and the lessons that you can learn from being an athlete that translated into what you do today. So for people who just tuning in that, maybe don't know you, if they don't live in one of the whatever 72 cities, they can hear those beautiful vocals. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Frankie V on the radio at Frankie Vizzle. On my socials, Frank Vinci in real life. And I say all three of those because it is almost like three different identities. Wayne, you met me as Frank Vinci back when I was doing sales. Speaking about sports, we did sports radio sales together, and that was amazing. But yeah, I played high school and college football back in Framingham, Massachusetts College in Central New York at Hamilton College. And my dream was always to do sports TV. Back in the Boston area, there's a guy by the name of Steve Burton, who is the sports director at WBZ Channel 4, and he grew up in my neighborhood, a little bit older, and I was like, this guy can do this. Why can't I? And I gave that an attempt, and kind of through the different, meandering of the career, it turned into Top 40 in Rhythm radio. Started in Portland, Maine, then Hartford, Connecticut, then San Diego, LA, and now, like you mentioned, I am on probably between 40 to 50 different stations across America, which is great. And I also get to do TV every morning, which was a dream of mine, with CBS 8 in San Diego. So it was a culmination of dreams and aspirations and a little of this. And here we are today in a pretty cool position and getting to be on this podcast to explain it.
Yeah, no, it's great, dude. One of the things that I think is really exciting about what's going on in your career is obviously, mornings. When we first got into the radio business, the dream was to do mornings, right? And you've accomplished that, which is unbelievable. And you're doing mornings here in San Diego. And then I know you and I shared the same dream, right? And we talk about it all the time. And that dream was what?
It was to work at Kiss 108 in Boston, Massachusetts, the station that not only did we grow up on, Wayne, but our parents grew up on. I mean, the station's been around since the 70s. And it was always like that thing in the back of your head. It didn't matter. I mean, Boston is a major city. It's market number 10. For those that there's 1,000 markets. And when you're top 10, like you're there. It could have been market 1,000. It didn't matter. It is home. And I didn't know LA and New York. I just knew Boston radio. And I knew that I woke up every morning and went to school and listened to Kiss 108. And the dream when I got into this business was someday I'm going to be on Kiss 108 in our hometown of Boston and talk to my family and my friends and say, hey, look, I did it. And now,
Maddie in the morning, man. Like we all grew up
mhm,
listening to Maddie and back then it was, Dale Dorman
yep,
and just amazing talent. I had the opportunity to intern for Dale and Artie the one man party at
yes,
night.
yes.
And just that's who we grew up with. And like guys like Ralphie Marino and just amazing talents who now, some of those guys we call friends, which is just wild to think
It
about.
is so wild, and it's even more wild to think that right now, every afternoon, 2 p.m. till 7 p.m., not only do I get to be on Kiss 108 doing afternoon drive, but I do it with my best friend. He also goes by the name Mikey V. His real name's Mike Vinci. My actual brother and I do afternoons together alongside a girl by the name of Gianna, and it's mind-boggling to me. Literally, like some days I have to stop and say, "Is this really happening?" Because mom is a teacher in the Framingham Public Schools, and her kids and parents come in and say, "Hey, I hear your boys on the radio every day." I mean, it's happening, and it's the most ridiculous thing that I get to do it every day with my brother.
I got to tell you, because I feel so bad for your mom because not you. You have a very respectful,
Thank you.
you tell very nice, wholesome stories. But I listened to the episode of some of those podcasts that
Yeah.
you did before you had an afternoon drive show where Mikey told some pretty raw
He
stories.
did.
And imagine, I just remember when I was on the air, my parents being like, really? Did you have to tell that story?
Well, it's
Like,
funny you say that because yeah, and to get to where we got to on Kiss 108 in Boston doing afternoons together, we had to start by doing a podcast and kind of showing we can work together.
yeah,
And it's funny you say that because yes, Mikey is definitely the one that's a little bit, over there. So we did the podcast, and one of the big bosses of iHeart was listening in and was like, "These are actually kind of good, but can you take that story and make it a little bit more radio friendly? I don't know if you could make this happen." And we had to make demo tapes and kind of take those stories and make them more radio friendly and shrink it down. But yeah, those podcasts with those wild stories of Mikey and me doing my thing is how this thing whole started.
well, something that really makes people crack up here in San Diego when I say that you and I have been friends for over, I don't know, 20 something
Yep.
years at this point. And I tell them, we started, you were in sales, I was in marketing, but we also did overnights
We
together
did.
on Star 93.7. That was our both of us first time on the air.
Mhm.
And I mean, I remember the first time I cracked that mic, and I remember the first time you did the
Yep.
same thing. And, that journey of doing 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Star 93.7
Yeah,
in Boston, which was a big step in the process for us. But
it was.
yeah, making that demo tape and bringing it into Jerry McKenna to be
Yes.
like, dude, we can do this.
Mhm.
And for him to give us that shot, I mean, just a huge shout out to him.
So cool. And then Chuck Perks over there at the time was the one that I was doing sales and I would sneak in to these studios after hours and make these demo
Mhm.
tapes. And I remember Chuck Perks, he was at the CAF one day, and Chuck Perks at the time was the imaging director for the sports station. And I tapped him on the shoulder, like, hey, you don't know me, but I know who you are. And I would love for you to help me make a demo. He's like, bro, salespeople don't come on air. It's like, that's like a big no no. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's fine. I'm going to do it outside of my sales time. I'll come back in the studios. I'll do this. He goes, fine, bro. I'll give you a shot. Bring a tape to me. And I started bringing it every single day. I
Yep.
didn't sleep. I would literally like stay up at night making these tapes, and it's that journey that turned into the
Yeah.
overnights with you, Wayne, and then that journey brings me to where I am today. I mean, the show with my brother is now
Yeah.
syndicated, starting in a week to over 21 different markets, which is crazy. I'm on personally in over probably 20 markets. I do mornings in San Diego, and it all started because of these dumb demo tapes that we're making these
Yeah.
crazy hours, and then the overnight shifts. And it's you look back on that journey, and that's what I love about where I am today. It's like it didn't just get handed to me. Where you're at didn't just get handed to you. We had a dream back in the day to do some cool stuff, and we said whatever it takes, we're gonna do it, and we did it,
No
man.
doubt. And you and I mean, the thing I tell everybody all the time about you and I is that we started with the same dream.
Mhm.
Yours stayed consistent. Mine changed, right? Like I got on the air and I didn't enjoy it. You loved it.
Yeah.
I got in that studio, but I think I would have probably enjoyed mornings more than and what you're doing with your brother
Yep.
because there's reaction to the commentary. But when I did afternoons with Paul Marshall on
Mhm.
AAF, we would make jokes and then I could see his reaction and that would be enough. But when I was on by myself, I was bored out of my mind. I'm like, I feel like I'm telling jokes that I don't know if anybody's listening and like, or if anybody's laughing.
Right.
And but the thing I try to tell everybody is it's okay to change your goals
Mhm.
too, right?
Facts.
You've changed your goals. Your dream has always been the same, but I've been friends with you for a long time.
Yep.
You've updated those goals every couple of years. There's new notches on the belt you're going for.
It's funny you say that. So back to when I did sales, I remember walking into our boss at the time and now one of our best friends, Jim Rushton's office. And it was right before the holiday party 2002. And I walked in and said, hey, Jim, I know we got this big holiday party coming up in a couple of days, but Today's the day that I resigned from my sales position. And that's when he connected me with you, Wayne, and we started doing the mic
Yep.
talent stuff. But I always made that my checkpoint. So every year going into end of December is my checkpoint. And you're right.
I
Sometimes
love
the
it.
goals change and things change. But at the end of the year, I always want to make sure I'm moving forward. And I look back and I say, what did I do? Where was that last year? And where am I now this year? And my goal is for the past 20 plus years is to make sure something's moved forward. And again, the goals might change, the
Sure.
the outcomes of where things are might change, but at the end of the year, I look back and say, did I make a forward progress or not? And it's kind of my checkpoint. It all goes back to stepping aside from doing sales on that day in December 2002 to where we are now.
I love it, dude. So, all right. So the whole concept of this podcast
Mhm.
is lessons from sports, and so I ask everybody to come on and talk about something that a game has taught you,
Mhm.
that has helped you find happiness and success in life. What's your lesson from
So
sports?
you know, it's funny. I was the only person from my graduating high school class to move on and play college football. We had some stellar talent. I was definitely not the best. I was the furthest from the best. I
Mhm,
mean, I was good, but I was far from the best. But it
mhm,
was myself pushing my limits to become as good as I could be. And people said to me when I was a junior in high school, "Why are you trying to play football? You're not going to be good enough to get on the field. Just stop." I'm like, you know what? Watch this. I'm going to start as a senior. And I worked my butt off, and I started as a senior. And then when I was doing that, people were like, "You're never gonna have a good enough season to get recruited by college teams." And I pushed myself my senior year to get that position. Then when I got to college, they're like, "Well, you're not the fastest. You're not this. You're not that." I'm like, you know what? But I'm gonna get myself on that field, and I ended up lettering, playing all 4 years, lettering 2 years. And then I looked at my radio career, and I remember starting doing college radio, and people said, "You're not the funniest. You're not the wittiest.
mhm.
You mumble when you talk. Like you really want to do radio? It's stupid. Why are you gonna try that career?" So I'm like, you know what? Screw you. I'm gonna try it. And then I started, and people said, "You can't make money in radio." 20 plus years ago, radio's a dying business. Nobody even listens to radio
Mhm.
anymore. Give up your dreams now. Go do something else with yourself. You got a good education from Hamilton College. And what I learned in sports was there's always going to be those haters and those naysayers saying you can't do it. And I would always say, "Oh, yeah, watch me." So when it came to radio,
Mhm.
same thing. Not good enough. You mumble. You can't do this. And my thoughts were always, you know what? Watch me. And I think I learned that from sports because it's not always the best athlete that goes the furthest.
Yep.
You look at a lot of the players in the NFL. You look at these guys that I mean, look at the Patriots. You look at like the Julian Edelmans and the Wes Welkers. They're like smaller, tiny guys. How are these guys playing in the NFL? Ended up being some of the best wide receivers for Tom Brady. I look at those players and I kind of say to myself, "You're that player. You're not the best on the radio. You don't speak the best. You're not the funniest, but I'll outwork everybody that I need to make sure my successes happen." And that directly comes from what I learned on the football field. Because I learned if I worked hard, I'm getting on that field. And when I'm on that field, I'm now getting my varsity letter. And it's kind of what I've been pushing myself through the radio business in.
No, it's a great lesson. You don't need to be the best.
No.
It's funny. We were just touring high school with my daughter, and there were up on the cabinets in the classroom was this sign, and it was like 10 things that you don't need any talent for. And I'm not going to remember them all, but
Yeah.
it was, to work hard, right? To put in the extra effort, like things that are the differentiators. And when you look back on your career, even sports or business, and the people that won are the ones who were doing the extra. The
Mhm.
people that, other people will go, man, Frankie got so lucky.
Mhm.
It's unbelievable. Frankie's so lucky. He's on in San Diego and in Boston. Wow, he's so lucky. Now I know about you driving to LA every Friday or every
Mhm.
Saturday morning to do a weekend shift for what, 15 years at this
Yep.
point, like getting up on a Saturday morning. I've seen the Instagram stories in my traffic,
Yeah.
like the grind that takes. But now today to sit back and it is hard work. Talent takes you so far. But we all know tons of talented people who aren't sitting where you're sitting today.
You know, to what you just said too, Teddy McKay, I worked with him in Portland, Maine. It was my first full-time radio job. I'm a 23-year-old kid that had the biggest dreams in the world, but I didn't know how to do a
Mhm.
radio show. And Teddy McKay at the time was doing middays, and he helped me and guided me. And he called me a couple of weeks ago when the announcement came out that the Vibro show on Kiss Radio was getting syndicated. He called me. He said, "Bro, if there was anybody that came to me now and said, 'How do I make it in radio?' He's like, I would give them the Frankie V playbook." And they would ask,
Yep.
"What is that?" That is getting up every day on a weekend and driving to LA and giving up your weekends. It would be doing the overnight shifts when you started. And he's like, "You did everything that everybody said, 'Why are you doing this?' And you said, 'Because I have a goal.' And you did it. And look where it got you." And it was like at that moment where I think I stopped for a second. I said, "You know what? The hard work paid off. It's been 20 plus years. And there's been questions through those years is, am I
Sure.
working too hard? Is it ever going to pay off? Does anybody notice?" And when that phone call came and we had the meeting saying, "Your show with your brother's getting syndicated, on top of getting to do your show in San Diego, a morning show, you're going to get to have a syndicated show with your brother." I sat back and I was like, man, that hard work paid off. And when Teddy called me and I hung up and I was like,
Yeah,
man,
that's cool.
it culminated into why I did what I did.
And like full transparency, like your career wasn't a straight line to
No.
success. Like you had moments, you had stumbling blocks. We're really good friends. Like I talk to you a lot. Like there were moments where you were that football player who just got knocked down on the field, and you had to look around and go, "What the? That just got my bell rung. What just happened? This industry is
Mhm. There
brutal."
was a moment, and I literally almost left this industry. And I've mentioned this to a few people, but I moved back to Boston. My dad had just passed away, and literally a dream job of doing mornings on Gemma 94.5 in Boston came. And I said, I'm in. I got to get back with my family. I left
Mhm.
my huge show in San Diego with Gina, moved across the country back to Boston. And 10 months later, I got pulled off the air. The first time in my career that I was told your show is being canceled. And I remember saying, it's okay. I made it. I got back to Boston. I did mornings. I'm here for my family. And I was getting phone calls from a bunch of different stations and companies and opportunities and record labels saying, we have a job, we have a job. And I'm like, I'm not just going to take a job to take a job. I've come this far. And I remember, and not to be graphic, but I was going to the bathroom and the door was open. I was living with my brother at the time. And I said, Mikey, he's like, what? I go, I just had a revelation. He said, what? I go, I think I'm done. I'm done with radio. Like I did it, Mike. What am I going to do? I'm not leaving you and mom to go to some other city, blah, blah, blah. Wayne, I'll tell you, I do not lie. Minutes later, there's a phone ringing. Answer that phone. It was San Diego saying, you know what, Frankie? We're flipping a station to hip hop to Jam 95.7 in San Diego. We want to bring you back. I went from literally quitting the job in my head. I was done with radio to 5 minutes later,
Mhm.
packing my bags to move cross country for the second time in 10 months to continue. And had I given up that day, and I don't even say given up, but had I said, you know what, this is it, I've done this much, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it was that moment when I got knocked down. Back to the football analogy. That's when you got your bell rung and you said, you know what, we're on the 10-yard line. I'm so close to
Gotta
that
keep
touchdown.
going.
Either I get up or I stay here. And I got up. And had I not done that, I wouldn't be where I am today, getting to have the show with my brother, having mornings in San Diego, having TV every morning. Like my dream is happening. And had I decided to step away when I got my bell rung, it wouldn't have.
And I mean, you're like me, like things happen for a reason. Like
Facts.
your whole life, when I remember that phone call.
Yep.
I know we one of your first calls, we talked
Facts.
immediately when that happened, and we
Yep.
talked throughout. I also was talking and having conversations with that person that called you,
Yeah.
which was
Yes,
pretty
you
awesome. And we had some good conversations. And as she said to me, she was like, I actually think I have a plan. She was like, and she said it, and you know it.
Yep.
I told him not to go. I told him not to go,
Mhm.
but he needs to come home.
Yeah.
He needs to come home. He went home to be with his
Yep.
family, but he needs to come
Exactly.
home because this is where you're supposed to be. And the industry came to where you were supposed to be.
Mhm.
You're still getting to do the Boston thing, but you're here. And then, you obviously get to, you're getting married. I mean, all the things that like fell into place when you kind of were where you're supposed to be. And I love that part of your story
Thank
is
you.
that like it took a little, I think stepping away made you appreciate some of the things that you did have here,
Mhm.
and that then opened the door for you to do the things you had always been dreaming
For
about.
sure. And when I came back, it wasn't like everything was handed back to me. And that was the humbling
Whoa.
part of this because, I had left at such a high point in San Diego, so high that I was
Yep.
able to get a top 10 market morning show and all that. And then I came back and yeah, I
Yep.
wasn't here, but I definitely wasn't when I
Yep.
left. And they said, we'll get you back there, but let's go, prove yourself. And
Yeah.
each year I had to work harder and harder than I've ever worked. And I remember being like, why am I having to do this? Like I've already proven myself. And I realized that sometimes in life, when you get knocked down, you have to put it back in because they want to challenge you, right? Does Frankie really want
Yeah.
to be here? Does Frankie really want to get back to where he was? And when I left, I was here and I'd say, I'm here now. But it took from
Yeah.
here to here of busting myself for a good 5 more years when I came back to get that to
Well,
happen.
if you go back to the football analogy, you got knocked down at the 10-yard line,
I
but you
did.
also got a 10-yard penalty,
Facts.
right? And it knocked you back a little bit. And you're like, all right, we're still in the red zone.
Yeah.
We're still there, but I got work to do, man. I
Mhm.
got work to do, and I got more work to do than it was a decision that I made. I stand by the decision I made. Like
Facts.
that happens all the time. Like I make decisions every day, and some of them don't work out. And it's like, that's okay.
Mhm.
So many people, especially people on the outside, this is a lesson I try to tell people all the time. When you're making decisions and you live and you work in a public industry, you make a decision. It's easy for someone to sitting on their couch to
Mhm.
second guess you all day long, but it's the mistakes that make you great.
It is.
It's the lessons you learn and what makes you the better person 10 years down the road.
I always say it's adversity, right? That word is thrown around a lot, but when you have adversity in your face, there's two things you can do, and it's true. You run from it, or you face it and you push through it. And I kind of like adversity. I don't want it to hit me all the time because nobody does.
No.
But when it's there, it's like the accomplishment of getting through it. I mean, I just had vocal issues 2 months ago.
Oh yeah.
Everything's going so great and life is good. And then all of a sudden, I lost my voice. Like this thing right here that pays my bills that I've dreamed about getting to where I'm at. So now I've made it, like I said, from here to here now, and my voice went. And I thought it was laryngitis. And I'm battling through it and I'm doing everything they said. And next thing you know, the laryngitis turns into a polyp on my vocal cord, turns into having to have surgery, turns into right before surgery being told, we're pretty sure you'll be good, but we might mess up and you won't be able to talk again. We might sever your cord and you're going to have a different voice. This is all going through my head. And when I got out of this thing, I said to myself, that was adversity. You know what? I'm going to use that to my benefit. We're going to find the silver lining. And I feel like that's even pushed me to want to get even better because I know what it would have been like had I lost my voice. And my mindset is now I'm going to do everything I can to never have to do something else if I don't have to because I love this so much. And when I was faced with that adversity of maybe having to step aside because of a vocal issue, it kind of reminded me of what I get to do and how fortunate I am.
Yeah, no, that's again just a yeah for I didn't forget about that, but like you're right, that's another level of adversity that's outside of your control.
Mhm.
That's not a choice you made. That
No,
was
no.
the world threw something at you. And I remember when it happened, I was talking to our friend Ryan, and I was like, uh, hey, this just happened.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, if that happens to anybody, it's like, ooh, that happens to you. That's a game changer,
Game
right?
changer.
Like that's a career changer. It's a life changer. And so obviously very thankful to hear that you
Yeah.
sound great and it's all
Thank you.
back and everything worked out. But you're right. And I'd say all the time when there's like a snippet of it getting taken away from you, you appreciate it so much more when you
Sure.
fight to keep it or fight to get it back or fight to get a little bit ahead.
Uh-huh.
There's that value and that appreciation. So I appreciate you sharing all that with us.
Of
So
course.
going to transition into phase in the third section of the
Yeah.
podcast. And so listen, you work in radio. This is a lessons in sports, but it's the same.
Mhm.
We've all been on the hot seat.
We have.
We've all been in that situation where you're sitting there and it's boiling underneath you, the pressure, the spotlight's on, and you gotta be able to think quick on your feet. So we're gonna go rapid fire questions here,
Brilliant.
and you just fire away with the answers. And we're gonna go. Question number one: favorite sport to watch?
Football by and far. I used to love baseball as a kid. Obviously, that was like the watching the Red Sox and whatnot. But once I really started playing football and understanding it, there's nothing better than a Sunday. You put that on the calendar. You know that Sunday at 1 o'clock, your team is playing, and you sit down and watch it. Best thing to watch.
Love that. Favorite interview you've ever done?
Favorite interview. Lady Gaga was my most difficult slash favorite. I interviewed her right before she was just after Just Dance came out. And she was the most
Okay.
difficult interview I've ever done because she's a genius. And she would twist every question I gave to her in a way that I had to follow up with something clever to come back. And I still remember walking out. My PD at the time, Jimmy Steele, says to me, he goes, Frankie, that is a major market interview. You've finally proven that you can do it. It was the toughest yet most memorable interview I've ever done.
What market were you here in
I was
San
in San Diego.
Diego?
I was doing nights here in San Diego, pretty brand new to the station. And I was the one chosen to do the interview. And I just remember my boss was staring at me like, let's see if he
Oh
has it or
man.
not. And she put me in the corner and I'll never forget that. I mean, it's probably been 14, 15 years since I remember it like it
Yeah.
was yesterday.
Has anybody even come close? Because that sounds like really scary and
That
intimidating.
that was besides that, I don't know if I've been scared of any interviews. I feel like that one was perfect.
Yeah.
Individually, I'm trying to think who else was difficult. Katy Perry was really cool too. She was fun.
Okay.
It's a memorable one, not a difficult one, but definitely a memorable one. I feel like it's a lot of the artists that are the bigger names you kind of freak
Yeah.
out with, but when you realize they're just human beings, it's cool.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Next one. Best single piece of advice you've ever received.
Best single piece of advice I've ever received. It's actually a piece of advice I gave myself, and I hate saying that that's the best advice, but it is. And it's give me a shot or give me a chance, and I'll prove the doubters wrong. And I created that quote through sports because I remember, like I was saying, I wasn't the fastest or best, but I'm like, you know what? Just give me a chance. I'm gonna prove all the doubters wrong. And I literally wrote that out and I put it on the wall in my dormitory right behind my computer. And then when I started doing sales in Boston, I'm the 21-year-old punk, and I'm like, you know what? Just give me a chance, Jim. Just give me a chance.
Yep.
I'm gonna prove the doubters wrong. And I worked my way up. And once I got it started in radio and actually on the air side, same quote has followed me. Give me a chance and I'll prove the doubters wrong. And it goes back to my sports days, man. Everybody's like, not fast enough. You're strong enough. You're
Yeah.
never going to make it. Just give me a chance. I'm going to work so hard that I'm going to prove all you doubters wrong.
Well, and you've also stayed in the gym and really consistent and you're very particular about what you eat. So I want to know, what was the last cheat meal you had?
Last cheat meal. So I was back in Boston this past weekend for Jingle Ball, which again, talking about our careers, you're getting to be at the TD
Mhm.
Garden on stage. Afterwards, they had a party, like a congrats party to everybody. It was at the Empire in the Seaport in Boston. and it was at
Okay.
10 o'clock. I never eat bad at 10 p.m. But man, they brought out all the Asian chicken, and then they brought the sushi and all the fried food. And I'll tell you, to this, that was Sunday. We're 4 or 5 days away, and I still feel it in my stomach. But every single bite was so damn good. And I would go back when that sizzling steak they brought out with the crisp. I don't know, bro. That was so good. So that was my last cheat meal on Sunday. I probably won't have another one for 3 weeks just for that one to get to my party.
That's amazing. I love it. All right. When you open up your phone, who's number one in your favorites?
Number one of my favorites, Wayne Partello, because I've known this guy for over 20 years and he's got my back ever since.
I mean, if it was based on tenure, I'm getting up there. But
now it'd probably be my brother or my mom. I talk to them the most on the phone. I text a lot of people, but when it comes to actual phone call, I call my mom every day when I go to work at 3:30 in the morning, and I talk to my brother every afternoon when I leave.
all right, so you're on both coasts.
Yep.
But if you had to choose one, East Coast, West Coast.
That's such a tough thing, and and this is going to be such a cop-out answer, but there's two reasons why it's tough, right? Because Boston, East Coast, has my heart. There's something about it. I've been away. I moved to San Diego 17 years ago. I went to college in New York. I've lived in Connecticut and Maine, so I've spent more of my life outside of Boston, but I always have that feeling because of family there. When it comes to the West Coast, and I look at what I have here after these years, I have family that I created. Nothing was handed to me out here, and I feel like I built such a life out here because of getting out there and shaking hands and making it happen. That the West Coast, now when I'm here, I feel home. So it's tough to say which I
Yeah.
like better,
So
but both have different feelings of home.
I've known you long enough,
Yeah.
and I knew the bullshit answer you were going to give me there. So I'm going to boil it down to two things that I know you love.
Yeah.
We're going to go Barbusa
Yeah.
or Aria in the North End.
Oh, that's how PJ and Massimo.
You go with PJ or Massimo? What do you got?
I'm going to go with PJ at Barbusa because I kind of feel like because of Barbusa, San Diego on my second trip back started to feel okay and home again, because when I went back to Boston, I still remember the first night back, I went out in the North End, stopped by Aria, did all that, and I was like, I made it, I'm home. But that was a city as itself that felt like home. I feel like San Diego became home my second time around because I had a place to go to when I wasn't in my good feelings. I was so upset at life because of what happened in my job in Boston that I was like, let's give San Diego a second shot. Do I really want to be here? I don't know. When I started going to Barbusa Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was like, this is like my cheers. I walk in and I feel comfortable, and it was my savior the second time around. So Barbusa, PJ, Joey, Mike, they get my love.
So if you're keeping tally at home, that's West Coast for the win. Okay, next. Okay. What's your must-travel piece of equipment? What's in your suit? What's in your backpack?
Razors. 2 of them. A skinny one so I can line up my facial hair, and also a clipper so I can trim it up. I have to always travel with some razors.
That's really funny that you said that, because my next question, I swear to God, it's written down, is how often do you trim your beard?
Man, it's tough because a thing called razor burn if you trim too much, but I am half Italian and Jewish, so I mean, you mix those genes together, you get pretty hairy. I'll be honest, I do a full shave every 4 days. I do a half shave every 2 days. See, every 2 days when you line it up. The 4 days is when you really trim it up.
Stencil or just by freehand?
I've been shaving since I've been 3 years old, bro. It's freehand. I don't need a stencil. I've been doing this long enough.
I've always joked about the stencil, but I've never gotten a real answer. It's freehand. That's impressive.
Yep.
That's unbelievable. Awesome. All right. That's rapid fire. I love it. That's the hot seat. It makes me laugh every time. All right. So the last thing that we do when we have someone on the podcast is the reason why I did this is to provide value. You and I were very lucky when we were young people. There were a lot of folks at that radio station that took us under their wing. You referenced a few of them throughout.
Yep.
I talk about, the first guest I had on the podcast is Rushton, but there were a lot of folks that took us under their wings. And I talk about that, the value that they gave us. And I know we use that all the time. And so I started this podcast so that if there's a young Frankie or a Wayne out there and they're just searching for answers, that people that I have this amazing opportunity to interact with on a daily basis, I want them to share some wisdom with some folks out there. So if I was trying to break into the radio business today, what advice would you give that kid?
Don't get frustrated and don't give up. And it's so, again, cliche, but it's so true, because I feel like so many people, when you and I were coming up in this business, if they didn't get an email back from a program director or a phone call back, screw this, I hate radio, I'm done, nobody cares, I'm not good. You know how many times I literally sat in my college dormitory and I sent out my college tape to 100. I counted 100 different radio stations. One replied saying I wasn't good enough. The other 99 didn't even reply. Had I been frustrated and given up there, I wouldn't be sitting in the seat talking to you about my journey over the past 20 years.
Right.
But it kind of pushed me when I had those naysayers. It pushed me. So don't get frustrated. And the other thing is, don't give up, because it's going to be difficult. you're going to go in there and have a terrible air shift. You're going to air check with your boss, or someone's going to tell you suck, and you're going to want to give
Yep.
up and say, I'm done. Like, it's time for something else. You know how many times in my career, I mean, I have that sometimes on a weekly basis. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, am I even good enough at this point? But then that kind of
Right.
drives me. So don't get frustrated and don't give up. And at the end of the day, take advice from anybody that's willing to give it to you, because I learned from this guy named Bob Goodell in my sales days. I had no idea what I was doing in sales. And I went to him one day and I said, bro, I was in Worcester, Mass, trying to hustle up there. I go, you're the mayor of Worcester. How do I make this happen? And the first thing he said to me, he goes, Frankie, you're the first person to actually ask for help. Most think they already know everything. Ask for help
Yep.
and take the advice. You'll succeed. And I throw that out there. Ask for the help, take the advice, and listen to anybody that wants to help you.
I love that. I joke, my first week on the job at WEI, a guy named Jim Melody
Yep.
stopped me and he said, "Hey kid, come in my office." All right. He said, "You got a lot of good ideas." I said, "Okay, thank you."
Yeah.
Like same thing. I'm a 22, 23-year-old kid. I'm like, "Well, yeah." He said, "I'm going to give you some advice." All right. He said, "Give these people ideas that make them money and you'll never be out of a job." And
So
I
true.
was like, "Okay." He's like, "Make sure your ideas make the money and you'll be rolling." And that's all I did. I've been doing that for 25 years now. Like just coming up with ideas to make money.
Great advice. It worked, and here we are. But yeah, it's so true. It's all about revenue. Make money. Find a way to help a
That's
company make money. You'll probably keep your job.
Yeah, I mean, but that's so funny. Like on air is, so many kids would come in their internships and talk about, like, oh, I want to get on the air. I want to get there. It's like it's a grind to get on the air. Like, how many promo nights did you host? How many, like, all
Mm,
the things beyond all that, the sales thing, all the stuff that we did, and it's like it's not easy, but it's a grind. And if you love it, it'll be worth it in the end because
facts.
it doesn't matter. None of it matters. The money, the syndication, all of that. That's all amazing. It feels great,
Mhm.
but you love what you do every day.
I do.
That's the part that's
I
special.
remember living with some high school friends after college, and they were making crazy money right out of college. And every day they'd come home from work, and I said, "How was your work day?" And they say, "Well, it pays the bills, and one day closer to the weekend." I said to myself, "I never want a job that I have to say, well, it pays the bills, because if you're only living to pay bills, you're wasting your life. If my bills get paid because of what I'm doing, is what is the best part of it. When I see my paycheck, I'm like, oh, my mortgage got paid, my car's got paid because I talk on the radio. How cool is that?" Not the other way around. So the second I
Yep.
told myself, when I came home from work and said, the day was good, it pays the bills, that's when I'm quitting radio, because you don't want to work to get a paycheck. You want your paycheck to get paid by what you do and love to do.
By the way, after now being in management, leadership, and now consulting businesses, when that switch happens, it's noticeable. Your work product reflects it.
Yeah,
The people and the reason, so that like that's a nice way of saying that's the reason why you're successful, right? The reason why you've sustained in an industry that has consolidated, right? The industry has consolidated. We've watched a lot of people not still be in the business that we know and
for
love
sure.
because the business has shrunk, but it's the people, not to say that they didn't, but the people who rise in any industry are the ones who are doing it because they love
Yep.
it, because you can just feel the difference in the work product, especially in a creative field like being on the air.
And as the business changes, be it radio or be it not, how do I become a part of the change? When I heard that there's going to be a thing called voice tracking in radio, or people doing multiple markets, we're all going to lose our jobs, I said, heck no, that's going to get me more jobs. How do I become the guy that's doing the voice tracking? How do I become the one that's
Mm,
getting the phone call saying, hey, we're launching a new station and you're our guy to be on this station? I wanted to be that guy. And, knock on wood, I've been fortunate that I became that guy. But when everybody else is saying radio's changing and it's done, we should all quit, I said, no, this is opportunity. Give me more.
right.
Like this, I still remember it was in 2004 when I was told voice tracking is happening. We're damn near 20 years later. Radio's done. It's over. It's voice tracking. I'll tell you, in those 20 years, I've been on hundreds of radio stations because of voice tracking. So I said, no, no, no,
Right.
no. The business is growing. Let's go. And that's the mentality I've always wanted. And no matter if it's radio or what it is, be the one part of the change. Don't fight the change,
Yeah.
be a part of it and be the best of the change. And I guarantee you'll grow with change. You'll have that job, you'll make that paycheck you want, and you'll buy that house that you've always wanted as well because of that.
You just reminded me of a great lesson as well as I think about that. When you work, especially as a young person, you get into an organization, it's easy to get sucked into the negative narrative.
Always, always.
It's super easy. Everybody's going, oh, radio's in trouble. Radio's in trouble. You got to run. Let's run for the hills. But it's the people who stand up for what they believe in and go after what they love. Like
Mhm.
it's so easy to get caught in that drama and that circle of just BS, right? And then next thing you know, you wake up, it's 6 years later and you're still complaining to the same seven idiots in the break room.
Yeah, 100%. Or maybe even for them, because the other ones got fired because of their
Right.
attitude, and it shrinks down. And it's so true. I mean, I walked out on stage in front of 20,000 people the other day. Radio's dead. Nobody listens. Oh, yeah. Everybody in that building was in there because they wanted to be there, because Kiss went away in Boston threw this party they were invited to. When I
Right.
walked on stage and they cheered for me, I'm like, They listen. They know what's going
Right.
on. So there's going to be the naysayers that are negative on life, no matter what the business is, and saying this is going and that's going. The economy sucks and this and that. You know what? It's always been that way since the Great Depression. There's always been financial issues everywhere. Things are changing. Be a part of the change
It's
and rise.
evolving. You either
Evolve. Yes.
it's evolving. I mean, let's talk. You can say to a Kiss 108 is a great example. Kiss 108 was all music all the time. The afternoon drive back in the day when we were
Yep.
kids was talking up tracks and hitting the
That's
post.
it.
Now you guys are doing segments. You're doing morning show type
Mhm.
content in afternoon drive because that's what's going to differentiate and was going to
Yep.
win. They the program director of that station, I don't know who it is, but they were very, very smart. They took a risk to put a show in
Yep.
afternoon drive that was going to be very different, a little bit longer form, a little bit longer talk. When you and I came up,
Oh
it was
boy.
like word economy,
Yep.
less talk, get to the music, get to the. Well, guess what? Music's a commodity now.
Mhm.
The industry in the world has changed, and now it's entertainment and personality that's driving
For
ratings,
sure.
and that's where you win.
And the boss there, Dylan Sprague, is the one that said, good content wins. Bad content, more talk doesn't mean you're going to win if it's bad content, but
No,
good content will win. And he said to us, let's give it a shot. Let's do good content and see what happens. And sure enough, here we are from a 1 hour to
yeah,
2 hour to a 5 hour to a syndicated show because of good content. And you're right. That's the evolution of radio. Some people don't want to evolve. Some people like doing the 7 second, what they call speed breaks, because that's all they know.
that's it.
No way. How do I
Nope.
get better at giving content? Because be it a podcast, be it radio, be it your TV show, it's content. There's always going to be a need for content. It doesn't matter which form you're getting it in.
None of us control what the market wants to feel and
Yep.
hear. We're not in control of that. The market will dictate
Mhm.
success. It's up to us as the providers of whatever we're providing, content, services, whatever it
Yep.
is, to adjust to what the market needs. And you guys have done a great job of that. It's amazing. I have two last questions for
I'm
you.
here.
If you could change anything about your career, what would it be?
Anything about my career, what would it be? Some people would say, would you change going back to Boston when you did because you lost your job and it didn't work out? And I'll be the first one to say no. There's nothing more important than my family. And I knew in my heart at that point in time, I had to get back. My brother needed me. My mom needed me. My family needed me. I would never change that. Would I change then coming back to the West Coast? People said to me, well, you're back in Boston. Why don't you just stay with family? I wouldn't change coming back here either. I don't know if there would be anything. That would be the only moment in my life that people would question. But I think I love every step of my career. I really do. I love the ups and downs you and I had getting started. I love my move to Portland, Maine, not making any money,
Mhm.
but learning, and then to Hartford to here. I don't think I would change anything. The one thing that people would ask me and say, "Man, you probably hate radio now, and it sucks. You should quit." No, that move to Boston was needed. I would never second guess it. My move back to San
Yep.
Diego has allowed me to really thrive. So I don't think there's anything in my career
Yeah,
I'd change.
I would add to that as your friend, the move to Boston you made with all the right
Right.
intentions and all the right reasons. There was no you I'll be honest, I second guessed you and I told you
Mhm.
that as a friend. You never second guessed. You were like, "Nope,
Sure.
this is the right move for me right now." And I said, "Then I support you 100%. I'm here for
Remember
you."
that.
You went all in for all the right reasons and look, no one's your mom is your favorite person in the world
Facts.
and she needed you and you were there. And so, you know, but then the world, shifted around you and I remember we had that conversation. Your family were the first people to tell you it was time for you to go.
My mom, it was
I
so
mean,
when you're right, when I called her and said that, I got the call from San Diego. My mom broke down in tears on the phone. I remember before I accepted the position, and it was literally a 30 minutes, either you're in or you're out, Ocean's 11 type of situation. I
mhm,
called mom, and mom broke down in tears. She goes, "I don't want you leaving Boston, but I want you going back to San Diego. You call them back right now." And she's bawling. She goes, "Tell them you are going back, Frankie. You belong there." And at that moment in
mhm,
time, I didn't question that move back to San Diego. My mom
right.
asked me. She said to me when I called her back and said I accepted the position. She goes, "What's your number one fear taking this job back in San Diego?" I said, "Mom, I have zero fears in radio anymore." She goes, "Well, why is that?" I said, "My dream job was just taken from me. Mornings in Boston. I worked my butt off for this and I lost it. But guess what?
Mhm,
I'm okay. I landed on my feet. I'm going to be fine. So my only fear in this business ever is losing your job. And I proved to myself I'm going to be okay." So I literally said to my mom with this one-way ticket as I fly back to San Diego, zero fears. I'm going to be okay. And I've kind of kept that
yeah,
mantra through the
I love
growth
that.
of the career now. And again, going back to your question, I don't question any move that I made because I've landed okay in each step of the journey.
Once they, once they take your biggest fear off the table, you can start making decisions with complete and utter
Mhm.
confidence
It's so true.
because what's there left to what that's it. Like, okay, so you lost your job, but you also earlier said the phone was ringing off the hook.
Yeah. I felt
Radio
good.
stations, radio companies, record labels, like, I'm gonna be okay.
I'm gonna be
It's not the end of the
I'm
world.
gonna be more than okay. It was almost that moment when the phone rang and was like, oh, I am good. And, oh, I actually can
Yeah.
pick my destiny. I could have gone to multiple different cities. I could have stayed in Boston at the time if I wanted to for a job. It was kind of like, good job, Frankie. It paid off. And again, I'm gonna be okay.
And it's embarrassing and it's devastating. Like you have a public role.
Yeah.
And when that gets ripped away from you, it's not just you. It's not just you lost your job. You got to go home and tell your wife and kids or your mom, your brother. The whole city, the whole industry goes, oh snap. Like, whoa, wow, that just happened. And it feels like everybody's, and then all of a sudden you come back with the answer within 45 minutes. And it's like, oh, what's up now?
It is. I remember I didn't want to go out for those couple of weeks because I would go out and people would ask, how come you're not on? What's going on? And I went from Frankie V back to Frank Vinci, which is great because that's who I am. But I no longer was Frankie V in my mind. I'm like, that chapter is closed. I got let go. And to reinvent Frankie V to what I've become after that, man, I would never say I would not have done that again, even though the outcome
I love
was
it.
that it didn't work out there to the point that
I can't leave on a negative question. I never finish on a negative question.
Right.
So I always leave this one for last. But because I think it's important that people hear the struggles. I make a lot of the questions about the struggle because we all know social media is the filtered version of happiness, right? Like we show what we show because we want people to see it. We don't always share. Like you said, you didn't even want to leave your house during those weeks because it's personal, it's emotional. So I like talking about that a little bit because I like people to know about the grind and the hard part. But then I also like to finish with like something good. So what's the best part about what you get to do every day?
You know, it's funny because I've been asked that before, and there's a lot of things that are amazing. So it's not going to be a one partial answer. I'm going to give you a few different things. The main thing I love is, and this is why I do radio, is to positively impact others' lives. When you're sitting in traffic and you hate your job and you just got an argument with your significant other and your life is not where it needs to be, it's my opportunity to change your mindset as you head into work and make your life better. There's nothing that I love more than a listener saying, you made me laugh and I was having a bad day. Or when my dad passed away and I got through it and I came back, I have had listeners come up to me and say, I lost a parent, I lost this, and I had adversity, but man, if Frankie on the radio could get through this, why can't I? So those moments to connect with listeners and help their lives is a top thing of why I love this business. Number two of my job is, man, it's fun. How lucky am I to talk into a microphone? I get up every morning to go do what I love to do. My favorite part of this job is telling stories and getting to be me and having fun. And it's crazy because there's so many people in this world that do not have fun at work, and I do. So I love
No
helping
doubt.
others have a better day, but I love also knowing every day I'm doing what I love and getting to have fun every day of my life. Those are the two things that truly matter to me. And then again, I get to give back and do a lot of cool things to our community and all that. I could go on forever, but those two things are definitely what I love the most.
Frankie, you know I love you. I appreciate you taking the
Of
time to
course.
be with us. If you ever looking for something to tune into, you can listen to Gina and Frankie on channel 933 weekday mornings.
Yep.
The V Bros on Kiss 108 in Boston. So if you're listening in Boston, but all over the country now,
Sure.
new syndication deal.
Yep.
Continued success, my friend. I love having you in San Diego. I missed you when you were gone, but I love having you back. Even though we don't see each other all the time, it's good to know we got family close by.
I was just gonna say, I'm so fortunate that you and Chris and your wife are right down the street, because even if we don't see each other every day, I know if I needed you here, you'd be here as fast as possible.
No doubt.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for joining us, and we will definitely keep track on all your success.
Myself, thank you for letting me relive my life through the podcast.